All right, we are live streaming in 3, 2, 1, action.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'd like to call to order the Croton Harmon work session for September 15th, 2022, and recommended action that the Board of Education approves the agenda. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries. All right, we will now move into the yes. Theo is right. He's there. He raised his hand.
Oh, I can see you there.
You're gonna have to look for him there. Okay, all right, so we will now move into the consent agenda. Recommended action that the Board of Education approves all items on the consent agenda. So moved.
Second.
On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Abstain? Motion carries. All right, so now we will move into the main event for the evening, which is our work session discussion. I'm really excited to see so many members of the future facilities planning team here this evening. And I will turn it over to Superintendent Walker to get started.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Good evening, everyone. Thank you to everyone who's here this evening, both in person and virtually, for devoting your time and your attention to what I think we would all agree is a really important topic. I want to share first that it's one of my core beliefs that all of us who are part of the lives of young people, as parents, as family members, as educators, as Board of Education members, as volunteers, I believe we're all inherently optimistic and that we're all inherently future driven. Because the time, the passion, and the energy that we offer to young people today, that is about what happens today, of course, but it's also about offering those young people a chance to glimpse their future, a vision of a wonderful, inspiring, and bright tomorrow for them and for each of us along with them. I believe that quality, being optimistic and future driven, is a special characteristic that is shared by so many members of this school district community. And if you spend enough time working in schools and in school leadership, you come to realize that there are moments, there are opportunities when you have the chance to impact the lives of young people by envisioning the school environments, the classroom spaces, the places where they will learn, play sports, participate in the arts, that will be a part of the future for the young people of the community and for our community as a whole. And I believe that we are at one of those moments now together. Tonight, we get a chance to hear from some of the people who have lent their vision of what can come next for our school facilities, and with it, what can come next for the Tigers of today and tomorrow. I'm deeply, deeply proud to be a part of this team, and I believe that it's truly a great time to be a Tiger.
So we start this evening's presentation by revisiting the overarching guiding question our district has posed for our ongoing work. How will Croton Harmon schools develop into a future-driven system? We start here because this evening's work session from the Future Facilities Planning Team is a key way that our district will hopefully be able to respond to this question for many years to come. The graphic you see on the right, that has been our beacon, and we've been using it to assure that the work we do together is targeted. And tonight you will hear how these 4 areas are essential to our being future driven. There is no doubt that Croton is steeped deep in a rich history. And this history can be felt in the schools that are a pride of our community. 3 schools built between 70 and almost 100 years ago are an incredible asset, and their strong infrastructure have and will continue to faithfully serve our students. And this is the case because a long line of stewards have faithfully dedicated themselves to upkeeping our facilities over the years. And today you will hear what the best next steps are to ensure that those infrastructure remain positioned to strongly support everything that we do. And our school systems also are always considering how to best meet the needs of the whole child. This balanced approach can be seen in our top 3 priority areas: athletics, the arts, and of course, teaching and learning. These are all about our students' experiences, and as you listen to our team discuss how this anticipated project addresses these 3 areas, we feel you will clearly see how improvements to our physical spaces will impact how these experiences will be more future-driven for our Croton Harmon Tigers. So to launch these proceedings, I'm happy to welcome to the podium Deslyn Dyer, one of our team members, for an introduction.
Very kind.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Good evening and thank you, Superintendent Walker and the board for having us here. Hi, everybody on the team. My name is Deslyn Dyer. I'm a mom of 2 girls in the district. And over the last few months, I had the pleasure of serving as a parent representative on the future facilities planning team. I first would like to say how much I appreciated the manner and the process in which the team meetings occurred. It was very helpful to receive tours of the school by the principals, to have an opportunity to go behind the scenes and step into the classroom to really envision the upgrades that are needed. And also, I'm also very grateful to Denise Cohen and her team for the immense work they put forth in charting out a financial map for these improvements and the many documents provided to the team so that we can fully analyze the scope of the work in making our decisions. On top of that, the architects were with us every step of the way, answering questions and clarifying details. And our student representatives helped to keep us grounded. So, my children's father and grandfather attended schools in these buildings 45 and 75 years ago, and they like to walk us through it and kind of talk about, you know, what's still here and what's not here. It's clear that many things have changed, but we know that some things have remained frozen in time. And we know that our students today learn in these classrooms, that classroom learning has evolved, and that it is important that our learning spaces also evolve. So it was gratifying to see that there was consensus around the proposed new learning spaces for all 3 schools. We also know that learning happens outside of the classroom, right? So in playgrounds and on the sports grounds. And our team prioritized upgrades in those areas as well. We heard from the athletic director that our students would benefit from athletic facilities that allow them to better train and compete with their peers. And we agreed with him on that. Similarly, the team prioritized improvements that would allow the arts to continue to flourish here in our district, and also to address the mental health needs that we know during this post-pandemic period are at an all-time high in our nation. So I'm going to close with this. I appreciated our new logo very much, and I think that it does invite us to reach for the stars. And I would say that our team tried to reach for the stars in our consensus in these meetings. And I would like to applaud our administration and the team for prioritizing facility upgrades that support the whole student, for those currently enrolled here, but also for those we've not yet met that are going to come to these buildings. I personally could not be more excited for the future of our current students and staff, and I just want to thank you for getting the work started. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Deslyn. And now our outstanding Assistant Superintendent for Business, Denise Cohen, will talk a little bit about this moment of opportunity.
Good evening, and I apologize, I'm having difficulty seeing the slide over there, but I'll try to take you through it. So as Superintendent Walker shared, and we'll hear more about this evening, our current financial position represents an ideal opportunity for the district to responsibly reinvest in our schools and campus. It's not often that a district of our size and wealth has the opportunity to support a project of this value and significance without taxpayer impact. Our largest asset are our buildings and grounds, valued at close to $250 million. This project that we'll share with you tonight will enable us to both preserve and enhance the integrity of our school buildings. It will enable us to enhance our learning spaces for our students in alignment with our future-focused teaching and learning vision. And lastly, represented in the debt schedule to the right of the screen, as you will see, that is a replication of our current existing debt schedule. So if you see, there is a gradual decline of debt. That opportunity allows the district to phase in a new project as that debt closes out, and also to capitalize on state building aid, which is at 42% approximately. We receive 43 cents on every eligible expense that we apply to our school buildings. So to the next slide. Okay. So how did we get here? The beginning of this year, we contracted with KG&D, our beloved architects, to look at our building condition survey. So during COVID, the state education department extended the building condition survey. So our last project was in 2016. We were supposed to have our building condition survey and 5-year plan in 2022. They extended that. However, knowing the needs of our facilities and looking at our long-term capital financing plan, we decided to move that forward. So we brought KG&E in. They performed facility assessments, inspections, and Walter Hauser will get into that a little bit more later. They looked at our annual visual inspection, our prior 5-year plan, and developed a building condition survey. Based on those identified needs and priorities, we established a team called the Future Facilities Planning Team, which are right here. And also it was a cross-section of our administrators, some students, staff, village representation, community members, teachers, parents, etc. As you can see, I can't really see the slide, so I apologize. I want to make sure that I'm going in the right order. Mine is all blacked out here. So our first,
behind you.
what's that?
Can you see that one?
Yeah.
So we established the team. We decided to take site visits. Our first site visit was at Croton High School. We met there, we walked the site. Laura Hvac, our principal, walked the team through the site, discussed some of the curriculum and teaching vision that she had for the building. We looked a little at the infrastructure. At that point, we also provided the team with some evaluative tools, such as schematic plans. We provided them with a mural board, which is a new graphic tool that has a full display of each of our buildings and allows each member to identify priority by dragging a little icon to their particular preference. Also, for those spreadsheet-oriented people, we provided a budget planning tool, which allowed them to select the items of priority and establish various levels of budgets between approximately 30 million and 40 to 45 million. We then took a visit to CET and the field, followed by PVC, and then we closed our session during the summer to really evaluate the data that had come back from the surveys that we took from each of the members, the mirror board, and the tools. And surprisingly, and I say surprisingly because I didn't expect it, surprisingly, there was broad consensus on all of what we're sharing with you this evening. So with that, I am going to pass it on to Paul Gibbons. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. So I want to thank Denise Pasaccia who put these slides together. I encourage you to view the slide deck after the presentation, but here are reflected our walkthroughs and some of the commentary and reflections that our members had during this process. So there's some great pictures and quotes there. We can go back to later.
Right. Good evening, everyone. As Denise mentioned, all schools in New York State have to have a building condition survey performed as well as a 5-year plan. And she went through the timing of that a little bit. That survey has to be performed by a licensed architect or engineer, and it's basically a team, and that's required by the state. Next slide. Yeah, just a brief overview of our schools. We have obviously 3 school buildings, 4 other buildings, 2 maintenance buildings, the district office, and our transportation building, approximate 243,000 square feet. And as Denise said, estimated value of about $250 million. So a lot of assets. Just to give you a little more history, our last building condition survey was done in 2015. That building condition survey and the 5-year plan was the mechanism for the bond that we approved in 2016. That project was for $20.8 million. That project was primarily completed in 2018, 2019, 2020. And then we had a little piece, the septic system and transportation, which was just completed the last few weeks. So that project is basically behind us. Also, we've entertained a energy performance contract. We issued an RFP and selected a contractor to do that, Honeywell. That involves upgrading our district-wide lighting. We basically went from T8 lights, fluorescent lights, to LED lighting. Our last performance contract was in 2010, 2011 timeframe. So the lighting technology changed. Also, we've done a lot of upgrades to our controls. So our entire district will be under one single control system now. And also the rebates and the efficiencies of solar collection has changed, so that it was beneficial for us to do that. So we now have solar collectors, much larger array of solar collectors on this roof at this building at the PVC Middle School, and almost I'd say about 80% of the CET roof, with the exception of the kindergarten, has solar. And high school's complete, that's active. PVC is going to be activated in the next couple of weeks, and CET, they probably have about another month and a half to finish that up and get that online. So these are things we were working on in the past. As Denise mentioned, late last fall, we issued an RFP to seeking an architect to perform our building condition survey and our next 5-year plan. We obviously went through a selection process, and KG&D architects were selected. Following that, there was a large information dump that we had to do to them. Obviously, we had to give them all of our previous 5-year plans, our annual visual inspection data, a lot of plans. I mean, we drive full of plans in quantity, which is too great to send over the internet. And they followed that up with a physical inspection of all our buildings with a team of architects and engineers. So that's where we are right now. And with that, we'll pass it off to Walter, KG&G.
The beloved.
Thanks, sir.
Basketball.
We don't throw that term around like
It's beloved, especially for building conditions. So I joined Sarah Davis tonight from KG&D Architects as well. I can see this great picture on the screen of this cast of characters. Well, there's a large team behind us of engineers and experts that have walked through all the buildings, all the campuses. So we know that building condition surveys and infrastructure is not the most exciting topic. It's certainly not the thing that we're all so anxious to talk about tonight. But it is a foundational element of any capital project plan. And we want to ensure that your buildings, which represent a very significant community asset, are in good working order as we proceed forward with visionary changes that can help instruction and change the way education affects students in the community. Next slide. So it's a fairly large undertaking to go through the building and come up with all of the tasks and items that are needed to be addressed to keep buildings in good working order. So we've implemented a prioritization technique. Very simple, priority 1 through 4. You're going to hear the word prioritization a lot tonight. This is simply in the context of infrastructure. So as we look at different systems in building, we talk about a system, we talk about lighting, we talk about flooring, windows, exterior walls, roofing. These are outlined in the stipulated form provided by New York State. And we'll apply these categories. So priority 1 would be anything life safety related. So I have to tell you, your buildings are in good condition. You don't have a lot of life safety related issues. Priority 2 would be health, safety, or property damage. So essentially, that's something that's not in good working order or it isn't functioning as intended. So essentially, it's either broken or it's gotten so old that it's dysfunctional. Priority 3 is age related. So what is age related? That means it's at the end or nearing the end of its expected useful life, but still functions as intended. So I think of my grandfather's car, had 200,000 miles on it, still worked, still got around, but it certainly had reached the end of its useful life. So that's category 3. And then priority 4 would be a desirable upgrade. So as our team walks through the buildings, we're thinking about projects in these buckets, and it helps us prioritize what's critical to keep buildings working as intended in good working order, and what would be nice to have. So next slide, please. We've prepared a summary by building. This is really just an executive overview, and it's a refresher from our discussion in June. We can start with the high school. There's something called the building rating. It's part of the building condition survey. The high school was previously rated satisfactory, will be rated satisfactory moving forward. It was constructed in 1924 with many additions up until 2004 and renovations a few years ago, including the space. And we've identified a total infrastructure recommendation of about $5.2 million. And below that, we can see some of the high-level big categories or buckets that this falls into. Roofing and masonry, paving, stormwater and site work, heating and ventilation replacements, interior finishes, electrical panel board testing and replacement. So the roofing itself is the areas of construction that occurred in early 2000s. So that would be classroom addition, the gymnasium in the rear, and that vintage of building, that roofing is nearing 20 years, which would be the end of its warranty period. So it's in great condition, but over time, flat roofing tends to deteriorate relative to UV exposure and seams come apart. So we're planning for the replacement of that roofing. And the site work is largely paving, sidewalk replacement, and fencing on the site. So there's a fair amount of resource dedicated to that. Heating and ventilation replacements include actually a system in this room, and then some smaller systems throughout offices and instructional spaces. Interior finishes, carpets, resilient flooring, things that are just aging. So next slide, please. PVC middle school. So PVC, as you know, is a beautiful building, built in the early 30s. It's a WPA project, era project. It had a significant addition in 2004. And we've identified a total infrastructure spend of about $6.1 million. So commensurate in size with the high school in terms of infrastructure allocation. I will say that PVC is known to have some hazardous materials. It's not dangerous, but it does increase the cost of some of the work that we're talking about. And namely, we'll start with interior finishes and abatement. This again is replacement of finishes that are at the end of their useful life. We all know what carpet and ceiling will look like. One premium expenditure in that building is the removal and replacement of the ceiling hallways in the 1939 portion of the building. They're plaster ceilings. There is some abatement required to remove them. And above those ceilings are heating pipes. So you you can imagine if there was a heating pipe leak above that ceiling, it's a very difficult place to access and requires an abatement to fix the pipe. So we're planning to replace those ceilings. Again, replacing the roofing that's on the same vintage of early 2000s. So that's primarily going to be the gymnasium area and the library area. HVAC replacements, so this is going to be equipment that's at the end of its expected useful life. Site improvements, which will include paving and walkway replacements again. And a food service refrigeration unit on the backside of the CET Elementary has had a number of additions. It was built in 1954, and we've identified $4.2 million of infrastructure spend at the building, which is highlighted by heating and ventilation replacements, interior finishes, roofing and masonry. So the primary roof area at CET is the commuter room addition. Again, nearing 20 years of age. We're proposing a playground replacement, which would be equipment, surfacing, renovation of the 3rd and 4th grade toilet rooms, and upgrades to the communication systems. So there's a 4th category which captures the administration, maintenance, operations buildings. It's about $1.8 million of recommended work. This is largely representative of work proposed for the transportation facility. And there are 3 primary categories there: paving, electrical infrastructure upgrades to support bus vehicle charging, and a water treatment system for the potable water at the facility. So in total, this represents $17.5 million of work. It's a significant number. This graph depicts the breakdown by building. So you'll see the spend per building, the recommended improvements per building, is commensurate between the high school, PVC, and CET, and then we see a smaller pie for the maintenance and operation facilities. So this is actually a very key slide. So this is by priority. And what this is telling us is that the vast majority of the recommended work falls into that priority 3 category. So remember, priority 3 are items that are in good working order, but are at the end of their expected useful life. This is indicative of very strong maintenance programs and very sound capital plan. So we have very few items relative in this whole proposal of priority 2 items. So that means that the buildings have been well cared for, your buildings are in good condition, and this is a prudent plan to avoid any emergency with your infrastructure. So that's a great slide. And then this just captures the work by category. We talked repeatedly about roof and masonry, interior finishes. There is a little bit of doors and window work, a significant amount of HVAC improvements to drinking fountains, and bottle filler play stations throughout all the school buildings, and then a broad brush category of other, which captures about $7 million. And other are all those different systems that fall into the building condition form, survey form. And you can see there's quite a few of them at different locations, and most of them happen in all of the schools. Things like fencing, exterior signage, casework, handrails, plumbing fixtures, locker repair, PVC, and then some things like fire service, valves, etc. So there's quite a bit that falls into that other category.
Thank you, Walt. As the future facilities team has been working with KT&D, especially Walt and Sarah, it's been diligent work. We've been working together to envision a project that would have the broadest impact on students, both now and into the future. And the team has arrived at a proposed project that aspires to balance the infrastructure Walt was talking about with a needed look towards the future student experiences. So this team's dedication was so appreciated that we want to be sure that we take a moment to acknowledge them.
And I want to echo that, John. Thank you to every single member of the team for the outstanding, dedicated, diligent work that you've provided so far. The projects, we're not done yet. I'm actually just getting started in some ways, but I wanted to as John said, take this opportunity to recognize and thank every one of you for your contributions on behalf of all the students, the faculty, the staff, and really the entire community. Thank you for your leadership. And as we think about the project, as John said, really in kind of two separate scopes. The first being the infrastructure component that Walt has described for us, and the second being the vision, the future-driven opportunities that we would look to provide for Tiger students of today and tomorrow. One of the things that the team worked to prioritize was to ensure that there were opportunities provided to students across all aspects of the experience and across all of the locations, so that each building and as well as our Spencer Field Athletic Complex felt the impact of this proposed project. And as we take a moment, I would ask just that the team would take a look at the scope of the potential effect here, which I think is really impressive to consider. Across all buildings, as well as Spencer Field, if you take a look at the concepts that the team has wrestled with and come to consensus around, I think it's a fair statement to say that if approved by the community, this has absolutely the potential to impact broad swaths of the experience for students across teaching and learning, the arts, athletics, as well as the safety and security that our buildings have come to be known for and expect. And we also want to make sure, as we did our work as a team leading up to tonight's presentation, that we, as we looked at those four priority areas, again, teaching and learning, athletics, the arts, and infrastructure, that we designed a project that felt balanced between each of those areas as well. And so we designed this slide to represent that, perhaps in a different way for everyone graphically, beginning with the aspects of the project that relate to enhancing student athletes' experience, the experience of our athletics program, teaching and learning across our entire system, improving the experience of our students in the arts, and enhancing and supporting the infrastructure of our schools. So I'll give everyone a moment to take a look at that. I find it impressive. And so now it's a wonderful opportunity for us to get a chance to hear from more members, leaders from our future facilities planning team. And so to talk about some of the proposed improvements to the student experience at the high school, I'm happy to introduce our high school principal, Dr. Laura Hvac, and Molly Levitt from the class of 2023 and the Board of Education's representative.
Thank you. So as you heard a bit earlier this evening, CHHS will soon be celebrating 100 years, which is a reminder of how much history there is in this building, but also a real need for some updating. Considering that most of the building was originally designed to fit what education looked like in the 1920s, the proposed renovations that we're going to talk about tonight focus on 4 key aspects of our school that will help set us up for what education needs to be now and in the future.
The proposal includes an auditorium renovation that gives us greater ability to manipulate our stage based on the type of performance, expand the size and functionality of the backstage area, and provides the ability to have a musical pit to enhance ways students can get involved in our performances, as well as giving us new sound and lighting systems. The proposal also includes updates and expansion of our cafeteria space, including a covering over part of the courtyard to allow greater use of the space, as well as expanding serving line and kitchen options to increase food choices and seating for our students. The goal is to continue to expand the options and use of our lunch program and bring all of the students together in a single longer lunch period in the near future.
Molly and I are going to go into much greater detail about 3 of the other items here: the STEAM Center, the Music Suite renovation, and the Innovative Learning Space. Beginning with the STEAM Center, which you see some possible photos of. We need to grow our lab and makerspace facilities in order to meet the demands of STEAM courses of the future and to make STEAM a regular part of students' learning experiences. This facility will help expose all students to the hands-on, state-of-the-art teaching and learning and equipment that goes along with that. There is much evidence that the disciplines of the future need to move into these more applied sciences that combine science, technology, engineering, art, and music, including but not limited to options like advanced engineering courses, design courses, and truly interdisciplinary application-based sciences.
It's also important to note that if STEAM equipment is more accessible to experiment with, more students will be able to see STEAM as part of their future. The purpose of public schools is to make it so education is not just a privilege, but a right available to everyone regardless of their background. We're seeing in real time how STEM education is becoming more and more important, and so making it universally accessible in our schools is important to ensure that everyone receives a high-quality education that will serve them well in the future, and also to help bridge the inequality gap in terms of gender and socioeconomic background that unfortunately exists in many STEAM fields today.
This is work that can't be done in fixed classroom spaces and really requires multifunctional spaces with state-of-the-art technology. The STEAM Center renovation will create a space that will allow for multifunctional, movable equipment that will be designed to allow us to create the STEAM sequence of the future. We want our students to go into college and careers having had unique, memorable, real learning experiences in burgeoning and important fields like applied sciences, where future employers are saying, wow, you did that in high school? As we design this space, we will be looking at current and future industries, what innovative schools are doing both at the high school and college level, and relying on the expertise of very talented faculty members here now who are deeply involved and committed to studying current trends and are just waiting for the space to make it happen.
The STEAM Center will become a space that is functional and adaptable for a range of interdisciplinary applied sciences that can meet our needs in the next 5 to 10 years and beyond, knowing these fields are changing and developing rapidly.
And on the next slide.
So next, the music suite renovations capture a physical area of our school that is part of a truly K-12 experience. The skills developed in our musical programs are built over many years in the district and are often some of the most memorable experiences for students. As a student and performer myself, I can say that currently our music suite is not in the best shape, but we do make it work the best we can. It is also important to note that this is a shared space between 3 very different music groups: band, chorus, and orchestra. Each of these groups have different needs, and the proposed renovations help address many of these needs. This would include removing the risers, adding instrument storage, and creating individual soundproof practice spaces so that students can access instruments and practice outside of class time. The music suite renovations represent the value that the school and the district place on music that involves not just individual talent development, but the importance of public performances, building self-esteem, and the value that the school and community places on the arts.
Music suites also where much of the behind the scenes work and ongoing preparation for our concerts, plays, and musicals take place, both for the high school and as well for the other schools. We know how important music and extracurriculars like plays and musicals are to our students' overall well-being and their student experience, and our facilities here should reflect our care about that importance of these experiences for our students. They should feel proud and excited when they walk into the music room, and this renovation will do that for them. And finally, on the next slide, we are very excited to talk about this last renovation at CHHS, what we were calling the Innovation Learning Space. This is an apt name because it will truly be a place where physical space is specifically designed to allow for an innovative approach to teaching that embodies the value of teacher teaming. As we think about future-focused learning and all of the work our faculty has done with transdisciplinary learning, we continue to face the same challenge in that traditional high school schedules and school buildings are not built for the kind of learning we need to see for the future. This is something we know and hear. You may have heard the phrase cells and bells and the references to schools built in the industrial era for specific purposes. And we are still operating in spaces that were built for that era, with each discipline being in its own literal silo, surrounded by fixed walls and the fixed content of a bell schedule. Our teachers work so hard to infuse real-world learning into the silos of each high school subject, but we just have not yet physically broken down the silos of discrete classes. In other words, through all the work we've been doing, we realize that we have hit a saturation point in a very good way, where we know that we have to physically break down some of the walls that divide us into silos and reimagine what learning spaces look like for our students and teachers.
Some of my most memorable experiences as a student have been special projects that come from those moments when teachers are infusing real world and hands-on learning into the learning experience, such as the 5th grade spaghetti fish project. That project involved so many disciplines, including math, science, engineering, critical thinking, and even some art. In high school, these types of hands-on projects do exist, but typically just within one class, like science labs. But these hands-on interdisciplinary projects should really be a larger part of the foundation of our learning at school.
So this space will take a physical space and make it one that really enhances an instructional vision. To be a little more concrete, the Innovation Center would essentially take a section of our 2nd floor, which we're on now, not this particular room, but a section of this floor, and create a large open footprint, taking down the fixed walls. The center of the learning space will likely be a shared teacher workspace, and around that space that a team of teachers will be using would be movable walls, for example, that would create the ability to open or close off discrete spaces, as well as ample space for small and large group student collaboration. And you can get a sense of from the images of some of what that might look like. The innovation space will be designed so that teachers plan together to modify and use the space on a day-to-day basis that best meets the needs of their classes for that particular lesson, unit, or project.
Ideally, an innovative space like this would allow for hands-on project-based learning to be more central to the learning process and span multiple subjects, like projects in the real world do. Imagine entire courses that include multiple disciplines taught in tandem through real-world problem-based curriculum. This future-thinking approach ensures that students think critically using tools and skills from multiple disciplines, since knowledge in the real world doesn't always stay in strict boxes. Also, when a space is centered around collaboration and exploration, it encourages students to be more involved and engaged in their own learning, which will be an important skill for when they graduate and go to college or beyond.
So rather than trying to fit future-focused teaching and learning into a box, the space matches the instructional design and actually enhances the instruction as a result. Not only will this increase teacher and class collaboration, but it will also create the physical conditions to allow us to have interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary team-taught experiences for our students. So, Molly, and I thank you very much and appreciate the opportunity to share the future of CHHS Canada. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hvac and Molly, for sharing that vision for the potential future of the high school and to share a bit of detail about some schematics of the high school potential renovations. I'm proud to introduce Sarah Davis, AGD.
Thank you, Superintendent Walker. So as architects, we are really excited to hear what all of these building leaders have to say, and that's the kind of stuff that gets us super excited. So what we've done so far is just these very broad strokes to be able to help both the administration, the building leaders, and the committee be able to understand where we're working within the building, and also to have for you and for the community to be able to understand as well. So you can see here, starting with the high school plan, what we've done is we've kind of massaged things around a little bit. We've created kind of a larger grouping of areas. You can see that the purple is actually the area that we are renovating. And anywhere that you see in light blue will be the areas that would be either an addition or something new for the building. So really what we've been trying to do is work as much as we can within the spaces that we have and just renovate within the interior. So you can see the auditorium itself is quite self-contained, but we're going to open it up to extend the stage, and you can see try to make some more connection and also stair access for the basement and the upper levels that are connected to that. We also, in the process of renovating and enlarging the cafeteria space, are going to have to move some of the spaces that were over there over into the kind of native auditorium suites, such as video production and sound. So we're trying to condense those all together. And then for the cafeteria space, you can see that we're opening it up to have kind of a more of a kitchen space, which we don't have right now, 2 distinct areas for eating, one more like a cafe and one cafeteria. And then also, as Molly had mentioned, the outdoor seating area. You can see also up in the upper right, we are, of course, very concerned about security, and we're also, that has been built into the project too, to make sure that we have an enclosed vestibule as the entrance to the school. Next slide. So as they very eloquently expressed, this innovative learning center is really a great space. And what we've done is we've identified together as a team one of these central spaces within the building that actually would be really well fit for this. Not only is it central, but it also is situated over where the older gym building was. So the structure is quite open and allows us to be able to open that up. Currently, I think there are about 6 classrooms in there. And like Dr. Laura said, you know, they're small rooms and they're very close, but being able to use this space and open it up will give us a great opportunity to do that. And then on the top floor, you can see the highlighted areas are the rooms that we're planning to work with for the STEAM Center. So, you know, because we have an older building, we can't necessarily knock down walls here and there, but we're going to go in and do what we can to make those spaces much more dynamic and usable and helpful for the students.
Thank you very much, Sarah. And now to share some thoughts on the vision for PVC, Principal Mr. Hvac and Ms. Sally Barnes.
Good evening. Thank you for having us. We're very excited to be part of this presentation. More importantly, to be part of the future facilities planning team. First, I would love Sally to speak first this evening. You know, Sally is one of the people who've been in PVC just slightly longer than I have. I've seen lots of changes and been involved in those changes. She's also a resident and speaks, you know, teaches 2 different languages. So I just said over that it has to be in English, but I know she prefers French.
Merci, bonsoir. I don't have a script or you put it in shape. It's okay. Thank you. I just, as a, my name is Sally Barnes, as Michael said, and as a Croton resident for over 20 years and a teacher going on my 18th year here, I'm delighted, and I thank Superintendent Walker and Board of Ed for having me speak tonight. One of the things what struck me about the improvements and the future of PVC is the social emotional learning. And I think that's a bedrock of Croton Harmon School District. I think the students of Croton Harmon really merit from all the programs that we do, namely at PVC. We have an advisory program of which I've been a part for as long as I've been there, whenever it was with the bullying, my anti-bullying program. I've been a part of that for quite a while. And it's really important as we look to the future of our district and our students that we consider their social emotional. All the academic and all the curricular work is wonderful, but we really need them to feel safe and comfortable in their environment. So with that, some of the things that most importantly for us, we want to create a suite, a guidance suite, a new science classroom. We'll go to academics first. We would be moving things around and we create a new science classroom. Any of you who've been to PVC, as I have been, the science labs are somewhat old and need to be kind of fixed up. So we would have the science suite. We also have, but I guess I have the next slide. Going back to again the new play field and playground. And again, we want to really encourage pure recreational opportunities, and we want to enhance and expand our outdoor play area. We've already got the Gaga pit, we have a new play set, we've got blacktop. But as you know, on any day when the weather is not so good, the students are kind of you know, they're blocked at Wednesday, like right on that blacktop. So this would really benefit what we could do. We have wonderful plans for that. The next one is the new student services suite and the Flex Support Center. So I think this is really central. I'll tell you a story. We need to make this area for our students. As you know, we have 5th to 8th grade students, and we need to make it central and accessible and comfortable for our students. So today, literally, I ran into a 5th grader who was waiting for one of our school psychologists outside their door, and they were in a meeting, and the student looked very uncomfortable and kind of didn't know what she was doing, and this is on the third floor, and the door was locked. I said, "Oh, can I help you? I'm waiting for Miss Elder." So I said, "Well, let's look around." So as I was walking her past Miss Elder's, I said, "Well, here's Miss Bonilla's office, and here's Miss Beja's." Well, literally, I was walking her all the way through the building. This child has not even been in the school 3 weeks, and think of how overwhelming that can be. And she, you know, to have a new student services suite, which is why we have new science rooms, because we would put them downstairs in a central location. Michael's going to go into all of this. This would be very, very important. And also that the students oftentimes will go into guidance, and there will be students there, and there will be staff there. So we really need to focus on the students. And again, going back to that social emotional part. With that, the flex space, I'm on the 4th floor, and the flex room up there is somewhat outdated. I believe it was a locker room at one point. There's access to the outside. It's not as opening and welcoming, I think, as it could be. And again, when you see this kind of furniture and this architecture, and you know, you add to that the wonderful staff that we have and the wonderful curriculum that we can offer the students, I think that makes a difference. So, and we have is there one more? We don't have one more. I want to talk about the last thing is the outdoor courtyard, and that was probably the play area. We should maximize the learning areas for our students outside the four walls. The pandemic has made that evident. As a teacher with a room over that area, it's used recreationally. We got creative. We put a tent over it, and Michael's going to go into detail about what we could do. And I think the pandemic has really forced us to be very creative. And I think the committee, which I'm honored to be a part, was very thoughtful when we were going through this. And I think in that way, it's good. So thank you.
Thank you, Sally. So one of the things that Sally pointed out that's really important to walk away with tonight is the interconnected nature of these important and necessary projects. It's not just about, you know, renovating space, but creating space that is more suited for students and staff to engage in learning and better align with the instructional goals, social emotional goals, and that of the desires of our faculty, staff, and of course, the mission and vision of our school district. With most of the areas that we talked about tonight, the current condition of these areas have not been upgraded, but for superficially since 1939. While we love the historic and architecture of PVC Middle School, neither the nostalgia or the structure should be inhibitors to the services that we want to provide for students. With all these areas, the plans that we speak of and share this evening are not mere remodeling, but a manifestation of considerable thinking, deliberation, and an earnest and thoughtful consideration of what a future-driven school can do for students today and into the foreseeable future. The changes and proposals reflect a multifaceted thinking about the interdependent relationship between curriculum, instructional methodologies, student support, a robust desire for holistic education, and both the aesthetic and utilitarian purpose of the physical plan we affectionately refer to as PVC Middle School. The changes proposed also is strongly representative of learning and realization, as Sally said, that went on during the pandemic, and what we can do with that from that situation. Now, I also have some comments about the play field, because I spend a lot of time out there with the children. The play field is made up of grass that was originally planted by Pierre Nicola in 1789 and later fertilized by FDR in 1980. It needs a lot of help. So the first thing is that sometimes grass grows, sometimes it doesn't. In the summer, it looks better than it does during the regular school year. But the fact is when it rains, it's unusable for an undeterminable amount of time. And this year, it looked more like the Sahara, as you can imagine with the drought. The proposed modifications would allow this field to be utilized more frequently with limited and more cost-effective maintenance. Moreover, the proposed modifications and installation of synthetic surface in this area would allow an expansion of use for physical education, recess, and school-wide and community activities. And that's really enticing. The proposed approach that we're talking about here also aims to rehabilitate this area in the best way possible when considering the shortcomings of the current state. Any alternative like refurbishing or reseeding in this area will probably lead us back to where we are right now. Moreover, the cost of deferring this project, I would say, would have a considerable financial commitment and does not serve to uphold the educational aspirations of the students that we serve. The outdoor learning space that Sally mentioned will integrate certain current components that we love of recess area and add an important dynamic. A dedicated and clean and easy to manage space will be created in what is known as the PVC courtyard. That now is grass, sand, and some sediment from the runoff that comes down the hill. This space will also be used once it is refurbished and remodeled and redone for theatrical and musical productions, meetings, and of course, outdoor learning. Our science classrooms that Sally spoke of, just like the high school, we're looking to integrate engineering, design, and STEAM education. We're looking to help our teachers execute transdisciplinary learning, foster student ownership, and infuse a true and robust scientific inquiry into the science experience. When we examine the New York State science learning standards, we see the future of science education. That future is here, that future is now. Our science classrooms have not been updated in decades, and PVC Middle School is in need of a state-of-the-art classroom, the ones we speak of tonight. The remodeling of the current classroom will enable our students to explore, inquire, grow in curiosity and ability to understand, and more importantly, to affect the future. The arrangement of furniture and the inclusion of equipment will help teachers prepare targeted and minds-on laboratory lessons that help students be scientists today. Nothing has the power to broaden the mind as the ability to investigate as scientific investigation allows. This project will ensure that the space supports and aligns with this purpose. And last but not least, our guidance area is currently in the former principal's office. And as Sally said, other areas or other people in the counseling team are scattered around the building. In order to align between space and purpose, and to help our support staff keep them at the ready to support students and their families, all counselors, school psychologists will be in one location based on this proposal. And that location will be easily accessible to all students and staff since it will be centrally located in the building. Every year at the beginning of the year, I hear, where is guidance? I really don't want to hear that anymore. I want to see where guidance is. More importantly, not refer to it as guidance, but refer to it as the student services suite. This will also help us to continue to destigmatize those who are seeking help from these outstanding professionals. Flex, as Sally told you, is located upstairs on the 4th floor. This would be relocated into the old principal's office, and that space would be refurbished. There is a lot of square footage there, and that new space would be reconsidered, and we can make sure that therapeutic support is not done in what used to be a shower room, but that the kids are showered with care, which is very important considering that these are some of our most needy and most vulnerable students. The interdependence of these projects that I speak of tonight illustrates the strategic thinking that went into this, that there are puzzles, there's limited space. So how do we best utilize that in order to relocate Flex and guidance and to create the student service suite and the science space? Furthermore, these changes and vision for modernized and upgraded spaces simultaneously addresses a wide range of needs that include the instructional integrity of our educational approach, methodologies, the well-being and health of our staff and students, and enhances the quality of the overall student experience. And it brings these spaces in line with the prestige and accomplishments that our middle school has become to be known as. In closing, what I've stated is not just propose updates to our school, but a transformation of these spaces that will help educators support students and exponentially grow throughout the most transformative time of their life. So I thank you, and we appreciate being part of this process, and we really look forward to being part of the next phase.
Very much, Michael and Sally, for sharing that exciting future vision for PDC and to describe some of the schematics. Sarah.
So as what Morgan very eloquently said, this was a bit of a puzzle actually, PDC. So you'll see that most of the spaces that we've been working with here kind of hinge upon each other. So we move one space here, we need to move that space to another, and it all worked out in a really, really wonderful fashion. So if we look at the ground floor, you can see on the left where that new science room will be renovated, which is currently, I believe, an underutilized space in the building. The Student Services Center, which is now going to be, as you can see, very close to the main entrance, is taking over the space that is very, very large science room that was also underutilized, is currently in. And so what that will allow us to do is create not only offices for the counselors and the guidance that needs to happen there, but we also discussed the idea of having spaces where they can meet with students individually, but also in small groups. And then, as you saw in some of those photographs, having a comforting, kind of welcoming space where there could be activities or where people can wait and students don't have to worry about where they're going or where they're sitting while they're waiting for something. Also, one more. So if we look up towards the top of the plan, you can see up on the upper left is where we're going to be putting the new turf field in, as well as surfacing for the playground area. So that will really help to activate that outdoor space up on that portion of the play area. But also, if you go down towards the right, you can see where the new kind of outdoor learning and amphitheater space will be. I believe Principal Hvac asked for, was it Coliseum or a Greek theater or something? Yeah. So this is our answer to that. We've had to downsize a bit, but you know. So it's actually a really great space. It's a really nice size and allows us to actually create a few different areas within it. Some for learning, some for small performances, and we'll have some nice connections to the building there as well.
Maybe a mini Coliseum?
Many. We'll have to give it a good.
Yeah, I don't want to use the Coliseum.
Yeah.
And then have people think of Russell Crowe.
Fair.
I was hoping for Aristophanes, someone.
So going upstairs to the third floor, as they mentioned before, the flex support used to be kind of off, you know, up on the fourth floor, and so now we move down to the old principal's office, and we'll be able to create some private and common communal spaces there as well. And then up on the fourth floor, the old flex support space will now become an office and conference suite, which will allow for, as I understand, there are not sufficient spaces right now for teachers to meet. There's one conference room that fits, I believe, 10 people, 8 people, maybe 8 people. And so this will allow for greater meetings and also utilize a space that is farther apart, so the students don't have to go there for things such as class or guidance, but that we can use for administrative purposes.
Thank you, Sarah. And now to share the vision for CET, Principal Carrie Bianchi and Director of Technology and Innovation, Dr. Jared Blair.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to share some of our thoughts and visions for CET at this time. So when we were asked to create a wish list of proposed or desired changes and improvements to CET, I looked at this as a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to improve the educational and social emotional experiences for our youngest learners. So a few of the things that we're going to look to do include, and we'll go into more detail about 3 of these as well, looking into improvements and enhancements to our library space, improvements to our gymnasium, a really exciting opportunity to revitalize and repurpose our kindergarten courtyard area, as well as air conditioning in the kindergarten wing and improvements to our cafeteria space. So similar to CHHS and PDC, sections of CET have been serving our students for many years. It has served us well but was designed for the learning of over 60 years ago. Times have changed and the future remains unseen. The proposed projects will help to ensure that we are meeting the needs of our current CET students and future CET students. The projects will promote innovation and engagement for all students and faculty. So the first area that we're going to talk about in a little more detail is our kindergarten courtyard. So many people may not even be aware of the space that we have in the courtyard that is centrally located down almost below our kindergarten, first and second grade wings. What we envision is a space to enhance our focus on the arts by providing a unique space for student performances, concerts, assemblies, drama experiences, as well as additional outdoor learning spaces for collaborative experiences, outdoor teaching, and outdoor center work. Many of our teachers learned, like Sally said, during the pandemic, how much being outdoors has improved student engagement and provided unique opportunities. So by repurposing and reimagining this space, we will be able to serve all of our students in all of our grade levels that will benefit from this newly developed outdoor area. So we're picturing not quite a Coliseum, but more of an amphitheater type of space where students can go for any number of different things. And I'll be honest, at this point, that space is very underutilized, but is such a unique and beautiful place to be. So we're really looking forward to providing those opportunities for our students. The next space that we're going to talk about is our library. Our library is actually one of my favorite spaces in the building right now. When you walk into the CET library, it reminds me more of like a public library than a school library. We have beautiful open space, a wall of windows that just brings beautiful natural light. So not that our library is underutilized right now, but what we're looking to do is provide a unique space for transdisciplinary learning, including ELA, social studies, science, and STEAM. Holding on to some of the traditional library assets, including book stacks and reading books, we still want our children to have opportunities and spaces and regular interaction with, paper, tangible books in their hands and learning about story elements and proper use and care of a book. So we want to hold on to those things, but we also want to couple that with flexible seating, collaborative workspaces, and opportunities for technology integration to allow all students to engage in innovative opportunities such as robotics and coding. And on that note, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Blair.
So if you have a child who has gone through CET or you're a colleague of Rennie McManus, you know that the library special is a favorite. Rennie has artfully blended the library with makerspace. Makerspaces are collaborative spaces where individuals gather to get creative, do DIY projects, invent and share ideas. And the students at CET deserve a true makerspace environment that will nurture inquiry and wonder. Ideally, makerspaces offer creativity tools like 3D printers, software, electronics, craft and hardware supplies, and we ensure that way that making is truly what students are doing in that space. We're really excited to provide that for those students.
Thank you. And our last area that we're going to focus on is our gym. And although we sincerely value the opportunities to engage students in physical activity in traditional spaces, including our beautiful outdoors, our gymnasium will benefit from upgrades to things like backboards, mats, partition door, and PA system. Those things have not been touched in years and will just improve the quality of the experience in the gym. But we're also looking to enhance the gym experience with some more innovative means.
Yeah, so in addition to those traditional upgrades, renovations to the CET gymnasium provide an exciting opportunity to innovate physical education as we modernize the gymnasium and bring it to a future-driven space. So this includes the possible use of interactive walls that foster collaboration, creativity, and problem solving while providing students with wellness-oriented physical activity. How cool does that look, right? So this is an exciting space, and we're hoping again to provide this for our students.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jared. Thank you, Carrie, for sharing that vision for the potential future at CET. And again, to share a schematic, Sarah.
Okay, so CET, here we are, we're all on one level at this point. But you can see the gymnasium space there. We're going to be renovating, obviously, like they just spoke about. Mostly it's interior finishes and upgrading and replacing the dividing wall in there, but also some exciting upgrades for on the IT side. For the library space, it actually is, like they mentioned, a really, really beautiful space. And there are quite a few spaces off of it that are very underutilized at the moment. So what we've talked about doing is creating not only a really great open makerspace in the library that still includes the stacks and all of the new ways of learning, but at the same time being able to keep kind of a quiet reading room off to the side. There is an area for materials that are being stored for teachers as well, but then being able to open up the space on the corner for a conference room. Currently it is a conference room, but it's not being used properly because there's no access from the outside. So we'd be opening that up to the main hallway and making it more part of like a welcome center for the school. The cafeteria, mostly going to be interior upgrades, but also air conditioning, which is also really important because we know that that's a space that holds a lot of kids, and it'll be a great upgrade for them. There's also, you can see off of the cafeteria, there's a walkway that we're going to be creating to connect the cafeteria to the second grade wing, and that will not only allow kids easier access, but at the same time it helps to fix some of the congestion issues that you have when you have a larger group of students eating lunch at the same time. And then on the upper right, you can see the outdoor amphitheater area. Again, as Principal Bianchi said, it's a great space. It's just underutilized and it needs a lot of love and care. But I think that we'll be able to do some great things there just to activate that space and allow kids, and not just the kindergartners, but everyone to be able to use that.
Thank you, Sarah. And now to share the future facility planning team's vision for the future of the Spencer Field Complex, the man with the longest title in the school district. Director of Health, Wellness, Physical Education, and Athletics, right? TJ Goldman, and Mr. Joe Barillero.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. As Superintendent Walker just announced everybody, I'm DJ Goldman, the Director of Health, Wellness, Physical Education, and Interscholastic Athletics here with the Croton Department of Schools. It truly is my pleasure to be able to speak in front of all of you this evening with one of my helpful colleagues, Joe Barillero, and to talk about the vision for what Spencer Field can become. And I know that it has been quite a bit of time that the community has been considering a turf project at Spencer Field. And I would be remiss to not take some time to thank the group that met several years ago in the development of ideas about the turf project, and to really credit them for a lot of the vision and planning that has now hopefully come to fruition on a day like today. So some of the items that are going to be included within the Spencer Field complex planning include the turf field and the surrounding track. Also, the opportunity to provide stadium lighting for Spencer Field. With the transition of a natural grass surface to a turf surface, we will need to move the location of our track and field throwing events. So that's also a part of the plan to the CET upper field. As I have taken some time here in the district to identify some other potential needs that we've included within the project, again, through the work of the future facilities planning team, is the need for additional site access and parking at a closer proximity to the field location. Also upgrading our bleachers and installation of a press box. With the new bleachers and press box, our current booster shack will be displaced, and fortunately we will be able to provide an opportunity for a concession stand with well-needed bathrooms and restrooms with real plumbing, hopefully. And also with the location of the scoreboard currently and the new planning for the turf and track, looking at re-envisioning where the scoreboard would be located and how we can bring ourselves to the forefront of programs within all of Section 1 interscholastic athletics. So as you can see on some of the slides, some potential renderings and ideas that we have for our turf field and the surrounding track.
For those of you that are not aware, within section 1, our most common opponents, just about 90% of them currently offer a playing surface that is an artificial turf or an artificial playing surface. So this would really bring us to a competitive leveling field with our most common opponents in section 1. And it's something that for a long time, our student athletes have been disadvantaged simply by the nature of things that are out of our control, like the weather. And even with the greatest of efforts in communication and planning, with another one of my colleagues, Brad Kennedy and his team at the grounds department, unfortunately, there are certain things that we just cannot do even with the best of efforts. And by transitioning to a turf field, we would have the ability to continue to have those practices and those contests, even when the conditions are not at their best. As I mentioned, another component of the plan is for our bleachers to be updated, providing additional disability access, because it is one of those most important things that we want every single member of our community to be able to attend all of our events and enjoy them. And by having the upgraded bleachers, we'll make sure that that possibility comes to fruition. Along with that, we're also looking at an area that would specifically be dedicated as a press box to allow for our continued enhancements that we learned through COVID, the ability to continue to live stream, announce, provide a more positive experience for all of our student athletes, also an opportunity to continue to allow for scoreboard operation, like I said, with announcing and cover for coaches, to be able to continue to provide an experience that we currently would not be able to provide if we had inclement weather. And the last component that we will be discussing this evening, I'm going to turn over to my partner in crime, Joe Barolero, to discuss our stadium lighting.
Thank you, DJ. Thank you to the team for all the wonderful work we've done, as well as the administration of the board for taking the time and effort allowing all this to happen. I just want to acknowledge our student members, Molly and Nick. They've been instrumental to this, and they've been super helpful. And so thank you for that. For those who may not know me, I'm Joe Barolero. I have a 10th grade daughter, Natalie, a 7th grade son, Andrew, and they're active in sports. I'm also active in youth sports at Croton. I'm on the board of Croton Little League. I've been coaching for about 10 years. I've coached baseball, softball, currently coaching soccer. So when I was asked to speak about the lights, I was like, well, what can I talk about lights? The lights. But I got to think about it a little bit more, and 2 words came to mind. Access and community. So what about access? Well, for those who may not know, right now there's 400 kids playing soccer here in Croton between the ASO program and Croton FC. We have about 300 kids playing baseball and softball through Croton Little League. There's also youth lacrosse, flag football, CYL, and numerous other organizations. And a major struggle that DJ and I know about is access to fields. It's probably the biggest challenge that any organization, at least here, has, both for ASO, for Little League, I know for the school as well. And I think, frankly, having a problem with access to fields is a good problem to have. That means we have lots of active kids, and that's really important. One thing that people may not realize is that the school district utilizes many of the village fields. They use Mannix, they use Croton Landing, right? They use firefighters, and even duck pond. So we always have this conflict of when can we get to the fields, because we genuinely want to give priority to the school. So a lot of times the school's getting the early hours and youth things are getting the late hours, which is fine in the summer, but in the fall, it's definitely a challenge. So what will that do? Well, having lights and sprinklers is going to open up usage tremendously. It's going to reduce a lot of field conflicts. Instead of canceling practice because it's dark, you can turn the lights on, whether it's the school that decides to have a later practice or one of the local leagues. Having turf is also, just in general, having turf is going to expand usage to our older players that are in youth leagues. Right now, they only have one full-size field developed to them, and that's Mannix. And much of the way that Brad and his team does everything they can to keep Spencer up and running, the village faces the same challenges with Mannix, and it's often closed. So that means that our older youths really have no access to a field. Again, with lights, something as simple as that, we're able to expand usage. And the last thing I was talking about was what do lights mean? Well, to me, another area is community. It will allow us to have more games scheduled in the evenings. Why is that beneficial? A lot of people are getting back to work in person and they're not commuting again and things are happening later in the evenings. It'd be really great to have more of our sporting events under the lights in the evenings with more people here. I think the other thing is excitement. Talk to any of the student athletes and the thing they talk about most, their most exciting times are the times that I got to play under the lights. They talk about it, I know from the little leaguers to the high schools, they really, it's just something that gets them excited. And I think that's really important. The other thing too is when you think about access to lights and the type of lighting we're talking about, and we're talking about really two forms of lighting. One I would call the stadium lighting as you see here, and then the other one would be a little more general lighting, where if people want to come and walk the track in the evenings, there's now a safe place to go and do that. So you're really opening up again community usage, bringing the community to a central place. The other thing that people may not know is there's a lot of adult leagues out there. Through the village right now, I know adult soccer leagues that are playing indoors at PDC. Why not play outdoors? That can be done, they play in the evenings. So again, more opportunity to bring the community. And last thing I just want to say, this is a unique opportunity for us here, where we can do a major renovation to a field. And when I was thinking about taking this opportunity to put on lights, one of the things I thought about is, if you think about in the arts world, imagine doing a major auditorium renovation and then not updating your sound and your lighting. It just doesn't make sense. So, thank you.
DJ and Joe for sharing that exciting vision for the future of Tiger Athletics. Joe, great job making lighting sound exciting. And to share the architectural drawing of the Spencer Field Complex. Sarah, one more time.
One more. This is a quick one. So as we talked about before, we utilizing the upper field for the throwing events. And what that would require is also, we talked about extending the field itself to about 30 feet, I believe, to make it regulation size for certain sports. So that would be part of that, that interaction there. We're talking about also, besides adding a concession building, which is number B right there, so that would be down by the field. It would be accessible from both the new parking lot and the field, much easier for people with accessibility issues, but also for coaches and ambulance and everything we need for games. Over at number C, you can see we're talking about making that path, like we said, more accessible, more secure for walking, adding lighting, and making that a lot easier to get down to the field. And then obviously the main event is the field and the track itself. The bleachers in the press box, which would be seated kind of into the hill there, similar to where we're now. And then also making sure that we keep that connection to the trail for public use.
Great, thank you again, Sarah. And one of the other topics, for a number of reasons, but I think first and foremost because most of the meetings took place in June, July, and August, that the future facilities planning team thought through was the concept of air conditioning in the spaces throughout the district. This is a particular priority for me. And so understanding, of course, that we'd love to be able to say to the community, to the faculty, the staff, the students, that we can come up with a proposal that would air condition all spaces across the entire school district, it became apparent very quickly that that isn't feasible at this point for a couple of reasons. One, because financially it would make the project beyond our scope of tax neutral. We'd probably add between $12 to $15 million overall to the project in terms of its financial scope. Beyond that, to air condition some of the spaces would also mean to remove some of the systems that are not yet at the end of their usable life. So from a lens of sustainability and efficiency, we didn't think as a team that that was a reasonable recommendation to make. What we are proposing, though, is the air conditioning of a range, as you can see there, of new spaces across CET, PVC, and the high school. And the thinking behind this is because of the extent of the proposed work in these spaces, it would allow for some of those systems to be overhauled and changed out to allow for those spaces to become air conditioned where they aren't currently. The team also wanted to think through this proposal through the lens of health, wellness, and sustainability. And so again, there you'll see a range of ways in which the future facilities planning team has come up with proposals within the scope that you've heard about tonight that we think are responsive to those imperatives. Replacement of older mechanical systems with new, of course, higher efficiency solutions, focused on, as you've heard, a theme tonight, outdoor learning and outdoor experiences across the system, abatement, as you've heard about, of materials and replacement with new healthy materials, improved ventilation systems, enhanced infrastructure to support our vision for future electrification of our bus fleet, as well as water bottle filling stations across our district. And now it's my pleasure to introduce one of our true student leaders at Croton Harmon High School to offer a student reflection on this process, Nick Godek.
Hi, I was very excited to be asked to join this committee over the summer. When I got a phone call from Dr. Hvac, I was a little concerned because I was just sitting on the couch watching TV. Like, why am I getting a phone call? But luckily, I picked up and got it from a team of administrators, community members, and teachers. And it's actually one of the more fun things I did this summer, although baseball is also pretty good. I did prepare myself a speech or like a script, but as Ms. Barnes knows from my time in the spring musicals, I tend to go off script. So I'm going to be reflecting on my time in my district because I've been here since kindergarten. So it's kind of crazy. I'm approaching graduation. I've been here a long time. I've seen the school grow. I've seen the district grow. I've seen so many more things added to the district. I've seen more students. It's been awesome. We've also been able to have some homecoming games with lights, and that's really, really great. We'll touch upon that later. I'll start off with prioritization CET. As we touched upon previously, library is one of the best things. I loved it so much. I would look forward to it every time it was in my schedule. I loved being able to take out books, read, and just kind of learn a little bit about reading and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like the proposed renovations are going to enhance the experiences that I had and just make them so much better for all students or all future students. Now we're going to go to middle school. Though all the teachers made it an incredible time, it was a very awkward time for many of us, especially me. I struggled socially, and it made me, when I'm reflecting on it, I look at how important recess is to your social skills. So if we renovate that area, it'll help students do better socially. They'll be able to build more social skills. They'll be able to deal with conflict resolution better. And they'll overall just have a lot of fun with physical activity, which, as we know, younger kids love to move around, they love to run, all that kind of stuff. It's nice to have a break in the middle of the day. But it is important to highlight that there is more to recess than just running around. The social skills are very important. You're going through a lot of changes in this period of time. So why not let's make an environment to foster those changes? Now high school. Though I am a senior, I've been very much I've been a participating member of the high school, and I try to provide as much influence as possible. I've learned very much about the school, and I'm very excited for what the future of the school is going to have for many of the students, either new to the district or coming to the district. What I've noticed is when we learn every subject individually in these silos that Dr. Hvac described. I feel like if this innovative learning center is going to totally change that, and with this new way of learning, it'll help us all be ready for our future careers that we're already starting to think about in high school. And we'll be able to learn in a way that's going to be better for all of us. We'll be able to learn more real world experiences and just overall have a better understanding of how things work. I am the president of the CHHS Spirit Club, so I'm very excited about the proposed renovations at Spencer Field. The addition of lights is going to make homecoming games and other games that we can now have at night much better. So the school spirit here is going to be amazing. I'm so excited to see it, even though I will be graduated. Which is fine. These renovations will help us build stronger connections with the community as well, because community members will now be able to walk on the track at night, which is always something I've thought about doing, but I don't really like walking in the dark. They'll also be able to help build stronger and better connections with community organizations such as these youth soccer leagues, the adult soccer leagues, and other athletic organizations. Before I close, even though I will be graduated by the time this is done and even started, I'm excited to come back and see all the amazing stuff that is going to be done and will continue to be done in this school. I appreciate your time and have a wonderful night.
Nick, for sharing that wide-ranging journey on your experiences in our schools and your vision for the potential impact that this project has for future times. Thank you very much. As you've heard over the past hour and a half, this team, the team that you see in front of you, and many, many others, have done tremendous visionary work to come up with a project that, in a few words for me, can be summed up with concepts like opportunity, promise, and the future of our school system. I think you heard in the past 90 minutes what the next few decades of our school system can be about. And to me, it doesn't get any more exciting than that. I also want to say that, as Denise referenced earlier, because of the unique financial opportunity that we have in front of us, and because of the exceptional job that Paul and his team have done in maintaining the buildings over the course of time and the stewardship of the board, we have an opportunity to bring to the public a project that has that kind of wide-ranging scope and also be able to have it be tax neutral for our community at a projected cost of about $45.5 million. And to do a deeper dive into the finances, the backbone of all of this, of course, business official extraordinaire, Denise.
Not beloved. So, my goal here now is to provide a financial overview and discuss some of the series of events that need to occur and that we should be aware of as a community and board as to how building projects work in New York State. And then I'll speak briefly about where we stand on our current projects and how the scope and timing of those projects fit in financially for a tax neutral project. If you look at the graph to the right, that you'll see maybe one more time in our presentation. So the state education department, in an effort to incentivize school districts to maintain their buildings, they have provided a pathway through state aid, state building aid. At this time, the state aid that we are afforded is the highest rate that we've had in ever, I believe, as I see Neil shaking his head. We, due to our free and reduced lunch numbers and our demographic, we are up to almost 43% state aid. That, coupled with our ability to simultaneously retire debt while bringing on the new project, allows us to present a tax neutral project and absorb the cost of that project without needing to raise the tax levy in any way, which is incredible. The red box on the screen is really the sweet spot. That's the area that we're trying to achieve to maintain in order to keep it tax neutral. So for the next slide. Thank you. So now, as you can imagine, there are a lot of factors that need to be considered. To achieve tax neutrality, we first need to determine the financial scope of the project, which was really the work of the facilities planning team. Then we need to look at each component of the project because aidability is determined by building aid units. So we look at each component of the project and assess the aidability for that component. Then what we have to do is we have to put all of the components collectively into their respective building because each building has a maximum cost allowance for construction costs and incidental costs. Once that maximum cost allowance is hit, anything beyond that is not aidable whatsoever. So we have to look at them individually and then collectively, and then assess that to get an aidability factor. So it really requires that we strip everything down. Can we go to the next slide? So for added measure and establishing a conservative estimate, we factored in additional assumptions to be sure that we were projecting conservative figures. So put simply, if you look at the left side of the circle, that represents the, we'll call it the revenue side. It's the local share component. And then the right side of the screen represents the expenditure side, the cost and maintaining the project. So the assumed state aid that we have assumed, which is our current state aid, is 42.7%. We've also projected a conservative state amortization rate of 2%. That number is set when the commissioner approves our project. So we're not sure of that yet, but that's a 2% rate. Currently, we projected a high of 3.5% for bands and 4% for bonds. Currently, with the district, with our Moody's rating, which is AA2, which is 2 below AAA, which is very good rating for Moody's and Standard & Poor's. So comparable districts today are looking at band and bond rates approximately 2.8%. So we feel that that's a very conservative number. And then on the expense side, we projected 10% contingency for construction, design contingency of 5%, 3-year cost escalation of 21.3%, and a soft cost assumption for administrative fees of approximately 15%. So now we're going to jump back into big picture again. So what are we looking at here? So previously I've shown you our debt maturity schedules. So that is just our debt expense. This graph reflects the local share. So the local share is equivalent to principal and interest less state aid. So it's the net cost to the taxpayer. The orange lines represent our current local share, our actual current local share. So on the left side of the screen, you'll see that they're all approximately 2.8 million. The gray bars represent the projected local share based on all of these assumptions that I shared with you tonight. The key is, in keeping it tax neutral, is that green line. Anything that stays below the green line, anything that we could maintain below or at the green line is tax neutral. Everyone with me on that? So in summary, we can fit this potential authorization below that green line with these very conservative assumptions. It will enable us to revitalize and upgrade our facilities. It will help us maintain and stabilize our capital tax cap and our tax levy exclusion. So that is critical, especially now that we're operating under a 2% tax cap. It will, of course, allow us to generate the aid on that 42, almost 43%. If we were to incorporate the components of this project into our operating budget, it would take decades, and we would not receive any aid on it whatsoever. So lastly, with the proposed timing, again, no impact to our residents from a tax perspective. So, look at the project timeline. This is a very long view, and as you can see, we are at the beginning stages of a long process. Here we have the full scope. As you can see, the very, in the beginning, the short term, the next few months, we'll be refining our figures with the help of our architects and construction management firm. We'll be presenting learning opportunities for our community, developing communication plans to get this information out to the public. In October, the board will be presented with a resolution for the bond referendum. There are very stringent regulations and compliance matters around the vote, so the timing of that is critical. Followed by 2023, where our architects and design team will develop the schematics. We'll have stakeholder meetings. We will submit our plans to SED for permitting and approval. Then in 2024, we'll develop our bids, ideally award them to our contractors, and begin construction. Followed by continued district-wide construction in 25 to close out in early 2026, Q1, where we will phase out the project, punch list, etc., and then provide the state with our final cost reports to begin lead generation.
Nick and Molly will see it in the college days.
Thank you very much, Denise, and to offer some closing remarks from a community member and one of the members of the Future Facilities Planning Team, Mr. Pat DeLasher.
So we just heard a lot of information. I hope everybody's as excited as I am. I have a couple notes, but a couple thoughts that first came up. So we heard the patch of dirt grass, which is ancient history at PVC. What a lot of people don't realize is some of our varsity coaches fight over that piece of dirt for 3 weeks of practice before the seasons are officially over. Desmond, your husband, your father-in-law, I'm second generation, my kids are third generation. I think I went to school with your husband. I think you taught my father-in-law, right? So my name is Patrick DeLasher. I am a parent in Croton. I am an alumni. I'm just a member of the community. When I was asked to do the closing, I was like, how do you close? And I have some notes, and it's interesting because Denise had mentioned early, she was surprised at the consensus. And almost every topic of the note that I wrote down is already brought up tonight by everybody here. And nobody worked together on what they were going to say. At least I didn't anyway. So it's really kind of interesting.
We did do some planning.
I just hit the script. What we were going to say at large. But it's really interesting to think that it was 3 years ago. 3 years ago next month, I was looking at the first email, I think it was October 19th or October 20th of 2019, that John Buonamano, our athletic director at the time, put the first turf task force together. So I want to thank him. I want to thank Dr. O'Connor. She was very supportive in the beginning. I want to thank Denise and Paul and Brad. We stuck it out. We outlasted one superintendent, 2 ADs, and 2 Booster Club presidents. And we're finally here. But having said that, like, we got to a point where we had a project proposal and it was presented downstairs and COVID hit. And I think we're all just like threw our hands up in the air. We're like, this is unbelievable. Looking back at it, COVID is the best thing that could have happened for this project. Because when we first started, we were looking at Spencer turf only. And the way that grew from turf to complex to arena, we were like, wow. Now we're looking at an enormous project which touches on every aspect of a Croton student's entire career within the district. I think if we were to ask all of the stakeholders, Dr. Hvac, Mr. Plotkin, Mrs. Bianchi, Mr. Goldman, if you asked, did you get everything you wanted? Honestly, they'd have to say no. Did you get a lot? Are we hopefully getting what we need? Are we getting some of the stuff that we want, some of our wish list items? I think we are, and I think that we can move this forward. And everybody, speaking of the four of you, are getting something for your building or your program, which enhances everybody that comes through the entire district. It's an opportunity. We have an opportunity now to move forward to enhance the entire scholastic experience for all Croton students. We saw the 4 different pillars: teaching and learning, the arts and music, infrastructure, and yes, athletics. I was originally brought in for that small component, so I'm very excited that athletics is wrapped into it, as well as all of the different aspects of the entire project. And then on top of that, we heard one that wasn't in there that I was thinking from all along is community. Not only from the lights and people being able to come out, better seating down at Spencer, better access to Spencer, better sound systems in the auditorium for those of us that are losing some of our abilities and focal points of our hearing, to be able to have a better experience. Regardless of whether it's music, whether it's the arts, whether it's sports. That is going to bring the community together. Downstairs in what used to be Jock Hall, like this wasn't even here when I was in school, we have the Great Wall of Distinguished Graduates. We have the opportunity now that we can build that wall even more. We can have future standouts in music, performing arts, and yes, athletes. The opportunities here within reach, we just saw the timeline. I hope that my son as a sophomore is going to be able to get to play his senior year on turf. But if he doesn't, and it still happens, it's still great. That's really what we're going for. So we have the opportunity to get that. The Croton School District, we heard all the 3 principals. We have built the reputation. We have a very, very strong academic reputation. Why not have the ability to expand it? We put out great musicians, great actors, great athletes, as well as academicians. We can do it all at this point. At the last meeting of our current team, Mr. Walker made a comment about being a once in a several decade opportunity. This really is. I graduated in '89. I liked revisiting the science lab. I remember it just the way it was. The auditorium, you sit in certain spots, you still can't hear what's coming off the stage as it did then. Spencer Field. When Spencer Field has the perfect right conditions, and you guys do a great job, it is a great football field when you only go on it once a week. But that is a huge wasted opportunity right there. We have the ability to get that up to the point where it is futuristic and future driven. Now, one of the things that I was thinking about, like, how do you really close this out? And it's kind of what I was saying before. I don't think there's a person who came up to this podium tonight who didn't use the word opportunity. I know I used it, I think, 6 or 7 times as I was working on getting technical. This really is an opportunity, and everybody, like Denise said, is all on the same page. Everybody's looking forward. How can we do this better? Like, this is a perfect opportunity to have it in place without going into the technical. Tax neutral. It's really not going to cost anything more than what we pay now. And think about all of the extra benefits we're getting as a community, as parents, our kids, as students, as student athletes, musicians, actors. So I think that it's really a great time to move forward. In my closing, the couple things that I wanted to say in thanks of a long time coming here, and when I say a long time, like 30 years, 3 years within the last couple months. First, Superintendent Walker, thank you for asking me, and John for asking me to close. I appreciate that so much. Molly and Nick, you guys asked at the meeting, what can you do? You guys are here. This is what you can do. Get your friends excited. You know, like you said, at the time when you guys are gonna be out of the school, you're gonna be going on to bigger and better things, but you can still come back and say, I had a hard, and that can be your legacy. KG&D. This is really kind of cool, like, you can put the pictures up. Although mirror board, whoa, I had a hard time. Wasn't my forte. And the Board of Education. This has been a long time. I'm sorry if I've been a pain in the butt over the years. This is where we want to get to. We have, I know there's so many people that are so excited that we're at this point. This is the farthest and the closest we've ever been in my 50 years of living in Croton. So thank you very much. Again, opportunity for us to present tonight, to hear from the stakeholders, to hear from the community, to hear from our students, to be able to be at this point. And next opportunity, I think that I'm looking forward to at least, is the public. There's going to be a lot of education that needs to be done. The hard work begins, in my opinion, after tonight. There's going to be naysayers. There's going to be those who want to pick it apart. Meeting after meeting, Q&A. I think that's the best opportunity, and I think that there is a huge army of people that are ready, willing, and able to go forward to. And my last comment, Nick, you said you were going to be graduating by the time you're gone. What's Tiger? Always Tiger.
So much, Patrick, and there's a really nice segue because Patrick mentions the hard work that's ahead. And this slide really is a slide about readiness. This slide is just really letting the board and the community know that this team, obviously, you feel a sense of readiness on the part of this team. I hope you certainly do. And we are positioned as soon as we have the thumbs up to really do the reach out to our community that Pat was just talking to be sure that our community has the opportunities that they deserve to learn about this project and then make an informed vote on December 13th.
All right, well, I want to first just say thank you so much to the whole Future Facilities team, in particular all of our administrators who presented to us tonight, and Deslin and Joe and Pat and Nick and Molly. Thank you for all of the work that you've put into this. Thank you for being so thoughtful in the considerations of how we could put together a project that is really going to benefit all of our students and the whole community. So we appreciate that work, and I would love to turn it over to my fellow board members to see if they have any questions. I'm sure you do, so I will turn it over now. But before we got into that, I wanted to just offer a sincere thanks. Anybody?
I'll go first. Thanks, Neil. Thanks, Neil.
Thank you, Neil. I want to reiterate Sarah's gratitude to everybody who worked hard on this over the years and who had the foresight to take on what seems like a very kind of daunting challenge to someone like me who doesn't take finance in easily. I'll say it like that. I was a member of the Future Facilities Planning Committee, and the evolution of this final plan, I think, was like an interesting process. There were some things that did fall by the wayside. To Pat's point, I think that there were a lot of things that are included in this plan that were on people's wish lists, and there are some things on those wish lists that didn't make it to this. So it has been a process. And I think that I appreciate the work of the committee and all of the administrators even more for having endured that. I don't have any questions because I was on the Future Facilities Planning Committee and we did kind of hash it out during some of those meetings. But I do want to the extent that I can reassure the community that this has been a very thoughtful process that took input in from a lot of stakeholders. That started very large and that arrived at this final plan through a lot of careful analysis of the finances, of the impact on our community, on the impact on our students, and the ability for our teachers to be able to think in a way that will enable them to be able to fully embrace future thinking education, which is in line with our district goals, and we're going to hear about the board goals.
but we're also very committed to kind of educating ourselves on how to take this plan and these developments and make sure that our district continues to use them to the best of our ability. So that's all I have to say. Again, I just want to express a huge amount of gratitude to everybody who participated in this, to Denise, who put all of these amazing numbers together, and to everyone else. So that's all I have to say.
So I have a few questions about at the various buildings, and this is probably more for KG&D. So at the high school, I noticed that in order to expand the cafeteria space, it's been necessary to move video production. My question is video production going to have the same amount of space that they currently have? How does that change in the amount of space that they have?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the idea is to give them the same amount of space, and the plan currently is to relocate video production as well as the sound studio space in the performing arts wing of the building. So the final layout of those spaces is not complete, but the programming concept is to put them in that area. Certainly, we want to provide equivalent or better space.
Will we be able to use most of the existing video and sound equipment that was built out in those spaces, or will we need to get new equipment?
We're anticipating not being able to use what you have where appropriate. And I think there's a more detailed evaluation that will occur when the design for the space becomes more specific, and we can make an evaluation on some of the equipment components. But the idea is to reuse anything that's in good shape and supplement where we need to. Yeah.
Understood, thank you. The only other question I had, I didn't see it on the plan. I know there was a discussion or there was mention at PVC of a refrigerated space. I don't see where that is.
Sure. It's really what we're talking about is putting a refrigeration unit at the rear of the kitchen space.
So it's still in the existing space?
Our thought was to put it outside the building, attach it to the building if we can. So really, that's not going to be a space that's occupied by people in any way. I wouldn't think about it as an addition. It's really more of an attachment to the back of the kitchen to provide some more cold storage.
Okay. And finally, my final question, I got to find the page. The new walkway connecting the cafeteria to the second grade wing at CET. Is it planned for that to be open air or covered or?
Yep. No, it's really open air, and the thought around that walkway is twofold. But the conversation for the walkway is surrounding two issues. One is congestion outside of the cafeteria space. That's a very busy space. Not only does it always serve the cafeteria, but it serves some program spaces, some classroom space adjacent to the cafeteria. So during basically lunch period exchange, and at times when classes are changing through those program spaces, that hallway gets very crowded. Students maybe headed out towards recess and students headed towards the cafeteria. The walkway will allow basically a loop configuration. So when the weather permits, students can exit the cafeteria to the exterior, take the pathway and head towards their classroom. The second piece is there's a thought around activating what's called the Monet Garden, which is a courtyard space, basically in the central portion of the building. And that walkway will provide better access to that learning, or outdoor learning.
Got it. I was just a little bit concerned that if in the winter when it does still snow occasionally, it might not be as useful. We'll need to think about how we keep it clear.
Yeah, I think the thought is if it's a rainy day or an ice storm or a snowstorm, it's probably not being used. But when we have the ability to walk on an outdoor path it may provide an opportunity to just alleviate some of the congestion that occurs in the back portion.
If I could just add to that, in inclement weather, the congestion in the hallway during that time would be less because we would have indoor recess and then kids are not. So right now we have kids going to lunch, going to recess, coming back from art, coming back from music, all at the same time. So if the kids that would be normally using that path wouldn't need it on an inclement weather day because they wouldn't be leaving their classrooms for recess. So it would eliminate those kids out of the hallway at that time. So it's almost like it's okay that it's exposed because we would really need it on nice weather days when all of the kids are going in the hall at the same time, if that makes sense. So it actually is still very functional and will be utilized a lot and alleviate that when the weather is appropriate for it.
Thanks.
Theo actually has a question, but we'll let.
No, let him go first. Sorry, Theo.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Great. Well, I thank you so much for this really amazing and comprehensive presentation. I thought it was just amazingly detailed and presented. Yeah, I mean, I think it was just exciting, right? Simply exciting to see what will be happening to our facilities and really the planning process was clearly you know, just a lot of work and really well done. So thank you to the FFPT. I guess my question is really just a follow-up from my question last time on kind of, I guess, related to phasing, but also to what extent current facilities would not be able to be used during the school year because of active renovation or construction, et cetera. And I assume, and I think you said last time that, you know, the ideal is for a lot of the work to happen over the summer, et cetera. But I imagine that given it, you know, that it's a multi-year process, that, you know, that there will be some spaces that are in limited use or out of use for some time. And so do you have any more of a sense of that, how that could play out? And if not, right, like at what point could we get a sense of that?
Well, it's a great question and a good point. This is a very comprehensive project. It's complicated. There are a lot of pieces to it. It's affecting basically every building in the district. And while Assistant Superintendent kindly pointed out that this is a multi-year project, I mean, we're really talking about something that's going to span 4 or 5 years here, 4 years really. It's an awful lot of work to get done in that period of time, and it's going to involve some very detailed planning. So it is an astute observation that we want to plan the vast majority or as much work as possible to occur in the summer. But undoubtedly, there will be a very complicated schedule and logistics plan to work around the operation of the school district. And it will be a collaborative effort. We're going to work at every building with a team with every leadership group to find a way to get this work done with minimal disruption. But certainly there will be a give and take about how we can get this work done in that period of time, because the summer construction period, it sounds like a long time. It's really 7.5 weeks. And to get this amount of work done in basically 2 or 3 summers is a tall order. It's just not going to happen. So we're going to have to find ways to work collaboratively to ensure that construction can occur while also delivering all of this program. So there's a long way to go on that. That will be something that takes literally over a year to plan, between the detailed design effort and the development of what we call a phasing and logistics schedule that gets coupled with a construction schedule. So it'll be a complicated effort. I wish I had an answer I could just give you off the bat that told you exactly where kind of those pain points may develop as we design the project, but it's kind of an element that will be forthcoming in development as we move forward. I will say we've done a lot of school construction over the years. Almost in every case, the school buildings stay operational, and we'll find a way to make that happen in a safe, secure, and effective way. Okay.
Theo, did you have any other questions?
Just one follow-up that is actually completely different from this question, but I'm wondering just about the possibility of art installations. In some of the spaces that you depicted, it looked like it was just calling for murals and other kinds of artistic pieces that potentially our students could be involved in, the community could be involved in. So I was wondering if that was at all part of the thinking.
Well, I don't know that we're at that specificity yet, but I certainly love that idea.
If I may, first to respond to Theo, I think that is a wonderful idea, not just for our students, although certainly our students. But I think if we were going to look at art installation, sculpture, things in and around our facilities, community members who are sculptors, who are artists, I think we could certainly invite them. I think we might love to add to what is going to be, and is going to be a cornerstone and a pride of this community. So I think it's just a great idea for us all to keep in the back, if not front of our minds. I just want to say, as a member of the Future Facilities Planning Committee, along with Anna, I agree with everything that she said about how we worked together collaboratively and thoughtfully, and how it was so interesting to me to hear staff members, maintenance, and parents kind of all on the same page as to how to think about things, and whether they were in their own sphere, or their own silo, to use the word we don't know, or not, that they were appreciative of what it is that we're trying to accomplish in the system. Two questions. The first is, and this is one of concern, which I just raised because I'm not sure if this has been considered, and that is in the plan for the high school, we're talking about covered outdoor seating. That, as I recall, because I was on the board when the cafeteria and auxiliary gym or second gym was built, we had to keep that space open, as I recall, because for fire department access to the interior of that courtyard, so that ladder trucks could go up to the second and third floor in case of fire. How will that covered area that is being contemplated affect the issue of fire safety?
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a very technically astute point. The issue I think you're talking about is not only fire access for the building itself, but more importantly, access to rescue units for the instructional spaces above. And there are a couple strategies associated with that. One may be the type of covering that we're talking about, perhaps is less permanent in nature and not a physical obstacle for a fire department. The alternative is to create something that is suitable for rescue. And that would be basically a roof structure that's allowable for fire department to get on top of and rescue occupants above. Certainly there are a lot of windows in school buildings that open to roof areas, and there is a requirement to how to build those roofs with certain fire ratings and construction techniques to make them safe for fire departments to be on. So we have some options on how to do that. I think that there's a long way to go in figuring out what that outdoor eating area needs to look like, what type of shade covering or weather protection we're talking about. But you're absolutely correct. We're going to have to be cognizant of the fire safety issues related to the art rooms and the lower level as well as the classrooms.
And for the question that Josh had asked about CT, about covering the second grade through the cafeteria walkway, that creates a somewhat similar issue with regard to just the access of fire and rescue personnel inside that courtyard if it was covered, which is not the intention. My second question, and this is just more of a wish list. We talked about, Joe talked about lighting in the Spencer Field there. And I know I think I brought this up at one of our committee meetings. I'm just going to throw it out there again. If we're talking about lighting of the track to allow for people to walk the track in the evening, we should consider lighting the tennis courts. I'm not sure what the cost would be to add lighting to the tennis courts, whether that would be done not through this bond or through some other means, but as a community facility to be able to use the tennis courts after dark, and for our teams to be able to use the tennis courts after dark would be a great benefit. I'll add that one of the things that we talked about as the wish list that didn't make it was providing additional tennis courts at CET. But that's always something that can be done in the future. But the lighting, since lighting may be put in anyway on, at the field, may not be that expensive a proposition. And so I just bring that up for consideration.
Certainly in the context of mass athletic facility master plan and consideration for future lighting at the tennis court, at a minimum, we should be considering the infrastructure for the electrical service and capacity within the system that's going to feed the lighting for the Spencer Field complex and the associated walkway lighting to have the capability to expand to include the tennis courts, whether or not that happens sooner or later. At least put the infrastructure in place so that we've taken a step towards that. That makes a lot of sense.
I also want to say thank you to everybody. I think it does take the community through that such transformation and change. And this is going to be something that our children will be talking about, and hopefully their children will be looking back at this as well. I have some questions for Walton and business side. Sorry, Denise. Is it an oversimplistic way to say if you take the total project cost, 45.5 million, and that the state aid is that 42%, that roughly 28 million will be, no, 20 million will come from the state? Roughly?
Between 17 and 18,
Okay.
when you look at the maximum cost.
Yes. That's good to know. Just an observation, I was looking at the assumptions. The construction contingency at 10%, just from my experience, is low. You may want to consider doubling that at least. Looking at the charts, looks like there's room within the budget for that, but I would seriously consider, especially with buildings that are almost 100 years old.
Yeah, it's a good question. So our firm does hundreds of millions of dollars of school construction day and given time, and the question of contingency is a good one, because certainly when you're looking at an existing building, there's the unknown factor. What are we going to encounter? But I will say we feel we're confident about the contingencies we've included. There's a balance between what's reasonable, what's super conservative, and what's super. So the contingencies that are included are 5% design contingency. So that's to include all the things that we aren't quite sure or don't know about that will be in the project as we make our way along through the more detailed design. There will be aspects that make sense to include now, or just we're overseeing the concept development. And those are generally details and pieces like we talked about, they expanded the electrical size for future development. So we expect that 5% to be consumed during the design process. And then 10% for renovation is a good number. That is a blended number because we do have elements that are perhaps less risky in terms of construction exposure, like the field development or roofing replacement, let's say. They are very relatively straightforward, more or less single trade contracts. The more complicated interior renovations that have multiple trades or taking apart old buildings, those may require a few more contingency dollars.
And so everything that we talked about today really doesn't constitute a full regut of an interior space, is what you're saying.
There are spaces, right? The total $45 million is not a gut of interior space, so we don't have maximum exposure. Certainly there are areas of that, but we also have areas of the project, let's say over paving, asphalt paving. Our exposure is relatively limited, provided we do our homework on what's floating.
Thank you for that. Okay. Actually, since you're there. So we talked about in great detail the $7.5 million infrastructure work. Do you have similar level of detail on the balance of $28 million to get us to the full scope of 45?
Yes. We have an estimate for every aspect of the project.
Yeah, if you can share it with, or the administration can share it with the board, that'd be very helpful. And I'm just curious, how have you solved, and could be a discussion for another time, how have you solved the drainage issue for the field?
Well, that will probably be for another time, but it's going to be a combination of a drainage layer below the turf, and that can be done a couple different ways. We're talking about Spencer.
Yes.
Okay. So underneath the turf itself, we'll have a drainage course, and that can either be a composition of deeper gravel, which can actually hold as itself serve as a storage area for water. It may also include separate infiltration chambers, which basically gather the water and allow it to dissipate over time through the ground or percolate through the ground over time. So it'll be some combination of those strategies.
Thank you, appreciate that. My last question, I thought so, but Jared, is the interactive wall just for CET? Because that seems like something that every building would benefit from.
I think for now, we're looking at it for CET because that's the proposed renovation space, but I would love to almost pilot it there and then expand it across the buildings. So,
thank you.
Absolutely.
It's not for community use somewhere.
I want to know.
Omar, I'll meet you there. Because
Josh, question?
A lot of the spaces that are being touched are specialized spaces that have complex needs that are evolving. I wonder, this is a great schematic plan, and it indicates the spaces that are being touched, but it doesn't yet indicate what's actually being done to them. And this is a case where we have a lot of content experts for those spaces, who specifically the teachers that use those spaces. And I'm wondering what the process is going forward as you go in, as you get from where we are now to 100% design development, which I'm sure is still in the future, right? How are you going to involve those content experts in getting to the full detail of the design?
Well, there's a lot. And I think there's some work that has to be done in designing that process. But I can speak to how to our experience in other school districts. So in broad brush consideration, we've done less than 1% of the total design effort for this project if it were to move forward, if it moves forward. And the design itself will take the better part of a year. And over the course of that year, we would propose meeting with those experts, the internal experts within the district, generally referred to as stakeholder meetings, to gather input on not only the programming, the desired function, characteristics of each space or program element, and go through an iterative process, design process, where we meet regularly with them first as through an information gathering session or sessions, and then reflect what we hear through design. So really test ideas with design to ensure that the final concept or plan that's developed is reflective of the needs and meets the future considerations for those spaces. So that's something we envision evolving over months of time. And then,
Thank you.
Other questions? I actually have a couple of questions. Looking at, so you'd actually touched on it when you talked about that, the walkway from the cafeteria to the second grade wing at CET, and the discussion of the Monet Garden. So I know it's currently used a little bit for some outside activity. Would the idea be that that's someplace that perhaps not now, but in sort of the next phase, we can look at expanding the use of that outdoor space?
So that was one of my wish lists, but you know, based on feedback from the whole committee, that didn't make this cut, but I've noticed, and again, if you talk about a benefit of COVID, that space for my first 9.5 years at CET, I rarely saw a person use that space. And now I look out my window and it's one of my greatest joys to see people utilizing that space. So could it be improved? Absolutely, but it's not an underutilized area. It's not a not used area. It could be utilized more, but really we've noticed quite an uptick of use out there. I was envisioning, you know, possibly either a temporary or a retractable kind of enclosure so that you could use it more 3-season, so to speak. So definitely there's the potential for something there in the future. And again, it was on our wish list, but we obviously couldn't get everything we wanted, but we felt that the areas we did move to the top consensus wise were the things that more kids would benefit from. Because that space is still there. It's used as an outdoor learning space now. And now with the addition of Duchess to our CET community, I have the pleasure of watching the kids interact with Duchess out there every day now. So it really is a space that is used more than it ever was and has the potential to be more. And it's only because they were using that space during COVID that we realized that this walkway would be essential.
Yeah.
So it was one of those, as a result of this, we now know that that space can be used.
Great.
I just want to tell everybody who Duchess is for those.
Oh, Duchess is like the new favorite person at CET and PVC.
For those of you who don't know, it's Mr. String's emotional support dog, who I believe is spending time at CET and in Mr. String's classroom at PVC. Too much of the joy of anyone who's.
Absolutely, yes. I've heard more about Duchess than probably anything else going on in the classroom. So very excited to have Duchess in the district.
Can I just say something to Josh?
Yeah.
When you're talking about involving the content experts, when they were talking about the auditorium rehab, that we met and many stakeholders, not all of them, but it was Sarah O'Brien, Jackson Tech, Merlin Valerio, a lot of us had input on what that would look like. So I'm anticipating that when you go to the actual design phase with the other spaces, you would involve the stakeholders. I just wanted to point that out.
Thank you.
That's actually a really good segue to my next question, or just a thought, was in thinking about those performing arts spaces and re-envisioning and improving on our auditorium space here in this building. And also in some of the spaces in PVC, we do have some really beautiful and wonderful like historical architecture in these buildings. And just as an old house lover, just being mindful of ways that we can refurbish that and maintain some of those really nice architectural elements, I think will be important for lots of people.
absolutely, there's some beautiful elements on an old house. I have a love-hate relationship.
Same. For sure.
My house is built in 1763, so one of the issues is the doors are only 6 feet tall. But yeah, you have some great architectural elements. You also have some very nice art, some historical artwork to preserve. Discussion of structural elements or art installations, particularly in high school and PVC, there are some elements that need to be preserved and maintained. So yes, we'll keep an eye towards that. It'll be a nice blend of new.
It's very exciting. And then my last question is for Denise. In looking at the time, I was looking at the timeline, and I know you were talking about the ban and bond interest rates and conservatively modeling for those. What is the timing for when, is that 24? When would we be actually getting those in? And I assume our financial planners
Are on that,
given the
yes.
volatility of interest rates,
So-
potential volatility.
That would be in. So the timing of that would be at the end of 23.
End of 23.
Denise, that would be the initial borrowing. Would be at the
Initial
end of-
ban.
The initial ban. And just so we understand, since, and I know we discussed this in the planning team, so we can't borrow ahead of time. We can only borrow when we are starting to need the money, and we borrow first with bond anticipation notes, right? That are lower because they only go for 5 years, and then we'll wrap that in at an appropriate time within that 5 years to a full bond that is, marketed to the public. But I guess what you're saying is that the first tranche of whatever money is needed to pay for design, to pay for the initial construction work that may be happening in 24 will be banned in end of 23, and then more later on in 24 and so on, and then at some point, and, we will do that. And I guess one of the things for those, I've been through this before, that we have is we can kind of wait for the favorable time to convert bands to full bonds. If, for example, interest rates are relatively high at the end of 2023 and in 2024, but by late 2024, for example, inflation has eased and bonds can be marketed at a lower percentage, we'll be able to do it then. And I know this district has in the past always issued bonds that are callable before their maturity date, so that if interest rates are reduced further, we will in essence refinance at lower rates. Is that your recollection? Is
Correct,
Okay.
correct. I was
So-
looking for our, so our serial bond, which we issued in 2020, was under 1%.
That was for the energy performance contract.
No, that
No,
was
that was-
for our previous capital.
The previous, you
project.
got in 16.
Yes. So that was, our true interest cost was 0.79%. We timed that so well, the savings that we had on that. And then our EPC in 21 was at 1.5%.
Can I follow up on that question? Did you find out from our financial advisors if there's an opportunity to explore forward delivery debt instruments? Because it kind of eliminates interest rate risk, right? It's something that I've done in the past. I don't know if
I
it's
don't
allowed
believe it
within
I don't believe it
the
is, but I
public
will
finance sector. But if it's an alternative, it's an option, it's worth the question.
Yeah.
So, one thing that came to mind as we were talking about preservation with the buildings, another topic of conversation that was heavy on our minds throughout the planning process for Spencer Field was also the preservation of our beautiful environment and surrounding area. So, in the lens of preservation, also discussing, limiting any kind of impact to the environment in the Spencer Field complex area as well.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Any questions? Oh, one.
Will the renovation need an environmental impact study?
Yes.
Yes.
We went through that last- we went through that. I'm sorry, yes, but we went through that last meeting.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of that right now.
Yes.
That closes out on October 3rd, and providing that closes without any contest, then we will have the board approve 50AF type 1, type 2 and 3 on the 20th.
Any other questions for anyone? All right. Well, thank you all again. Really appreciate it. Denise and John and Steve and all of our administration and teachers, and Sally, I forgot to say your name before, so thank you again for your presentation this evening. But yeah, this is an incredible project. And as Pat mentioned several times, it is such an incredible opportunity for our district to be able to put together a project of this size and scope in a way that is tax neutral for our community. So thank you all. The board, we still have we have a further discussion on our board goals so that we can get them onto our agenda to approve the next year, but I will let you all go home. So you don't have to sit around and listen to our board goals. Thank you guys so much. Downside to this. I kept trying to like cross my legs. Like the chairs. Feel everybody started stretching their legs for a minute, and then we'll do more goals. Hey, Theo?
He's muted. Oh, I think we are left. Hello.
I think
He's
he's
there.
there.
He's
here.
Okay.
All right, everybody's
And
clear now,
hi.
and we are ready to have our board goals discussion. So you will find in the agenda the goals that Anna, Neil, and I put together following our initial conversation during our August 18th work session. And we wanted to put these forth to the full board for discussion in the hope that we could get them get a finalized version of our board goals onto the agenda for the August 6th business meeting. So did anyone want, I mean, I'm happy to read them out loud, but I feel like you've all reviewed them, so I don't know that I need to do that. But did anyone have any questions, thoughts, changes, suggestions, additions? I will open the floor. Don't have to talk about
I'll just give you some background.
Yeah.
I need this, I don't need this.
You don't.
Okay.
Use your theater voice.
Yes.
Strategy.
We met, I'll use my mom voice.
There you go.
We
It's not
met.
yelling, it's motivational.
And motivating you. So we, Sarah, Neil, and I met and reflected on previous year's board's goals and how, you know, that's some of the bullet pointing in the preamble. So the structure in and of itself is something that we tried to model against what previous boards have done.
Yep.
And we also tried to make these goals attainable. So there's some components to them, like you'll see at the end of the facilities planning. It's to review the process for success and improvement and present findings in a future work session. Like we wanted to be able to not make them so lofty that there wasn't something tangible that we couldn't like cross off the list. And we also wanted to make them attainable. So there was like, I mean, not too broad, or we wanted to make sure that it was enough to work with and not too much that we couldn't actually do all of it. So there were some other areas that we had also considered including. I know that Neil, I mean, just to be candid, we did have a conversation about you know, maybe educating ourselves a little bit more on like the special education process and looking at some of that, but we really felt like these are priorities right now, especially given what we have going on in terms of facilities planning.
And I think we also talked about the fact that, right, that the education and professional development goal that we have on here, there was so much so there's so much shifting and evolving in the district right now in terms of initiatives that we need, that this year, not just for the board, but I think for the district as a whole is a real learning year. So take this year to really learn about a lot of these different things, and then perhaps next year is a time that we can then do like a deeper dive on special ed and the people personal services area, and sort of get into some of the like, okay, so where are we and what's going on in these specifics.
Yeah. And just to the communication bullet, this particular bullet, I think, does coincide with some of the goals that we talked about from a communications committee perspective. So I love the fact that this is a board goal that overlaps with a district goal, that overlaps with even like a committee level goal, and trying to continue some of the continuity in that thinking. That's nice.
One other thing I would add is that when we look at our professional development and education, some of it relates obviously to things that we have talked about, future-driven schools and innovation and academics. Others, like sustainability and diversity, equity, and inclusion, are things that have been board subjects in the past. And we've had committees on them and we've done work on them, and it's in a more ad hoc way. But I think it's good to say we're going to take those areas and try to focus on them in our own professional development. But we also know we wrote this to state that this includes engaging in professional development on the work related to such topics as. Because if we were to spend a quote, deep dive on everything, we could spend a lot of time doing our own education, but we might get overwhelmed with everything else we have to do. So we'll be looking at those areas, I think, this will be board development to review, and figuring out where, where we as a board feel is the most important areas to focus on. So to the extent, we can check that off as having been accomplished. I think if we don't accomplish professional development in all 6 of those, we shouldn't think that we failed in our task.
We should attempt to touch upon the work related to those things, though, right? Just
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
be familiar
Yeah.
with like the bodies of study related to those topics, just to do due diligence
Right.
related to that.
Sure.
I think,
I
yeah,
don't wanna
be varying
say-
levels of professional development or readings or things associated.
Sure.
with it, right? It
Yeah.
might not be exactly equal.
I know Neil likes a field trip, so he has. the
Yeah.
field plan.
Neil's really gearing for a field trip somewhere, anywhere.
Yeah, anyway.
Just take him on a field trip somewhere.
On the electric bus.
There you go.
Jump on the bus, Neil, we're ready.
I'll take you down to see the new.
Ooh, there you go.
Okay,
There's about facilities on that, right?
Transportation center is beautiful this time of year.
So we're talking about more specifically, kind of, educating ourselves on processes. I'd love to, not to add more things to your podcast, but I'd love to learn more about how you're thinking about your goals, the administrative, the transition from kind of set statements to open questions, and how you're thinking about them, and how you're envisioning that to work.
His goals are gonna be coming soon, right?
Yeah, so maybe helping us as a board understand a little more of the specifics of what you guys are doing.
That I think that would fall under our future driven, like for us to educate ourselves on them doing that, which would be our board goal, that would fall under the future driven schools.
Yeah.
Component of the third.
Yeah, the board, you'll see my goals tomorrow in the weekly update, and these topics are good, of course, for us to know as an administrative team, because we think through work sessions and how it is that we can assist in conversations around these topics. It helps for us to focus some of our, this feels great.
And I know we talked about during this year, we're going to be working on guiding questions, and through guiding questions
Yeah.
and thinking about them,
Yeah.
that we will hope and anticipate regular conversations and work sessions and otherwise about those things, what you were talking about, which obviously connects with
Yeah.
these goals and connects with our goals and connects with our work governing the district.
Like how those guiding questions are being operationalized.
Yes, exactly. So we can become educated about it, to be able to talk about it with the community. And make that decision. That's good.
Anyone have any other thoughts? Theo, Mary, Josh?
I think these are a good set of goals. Perhaps more bullet points than I would have had. But it also gives us a good set of things to sink our teeth into, right? Without being too stretchy, but not too stretchy. And I think it's actually good to keep it to 3.
Yeah, and I think that was, we had talked about, are there things, right? There's always sort of another thing that we could add.
You can always-
These are 3 and they're broad.
Yeah,
so
and there's overlap between.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
All of these things interact with each other.
Yeah.
And the only one that's really finite to a certain degree is the facilities plan, in that, we have a big hot date in December, right? And obviously once that, if it passes, assuming it passes, then we have further work to do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
In response to KGD's answer, but there's still a lot of design development to do.
Right.
Right.
we're nowhere near done.
Yeah.
So,
I think some of the, like, expanding beyond like just 3 bullet points for each point was to kind of make it specific enough that then you could measure whether or not you had actually done it. Because to just do 3 would be to the exclusion of some things that we did want to touch upon. But also then at the end of the year to have this and use it in the evaluation tool when we do our board evaluation. And grow from there.
I will add that with regard to the first facilities, they're really a matter of kind of on a timeline.
Yeah.
The first one is, review the material and review the, you working with our teams.
Check.
Review the plans so that we're going to be basically talking and work to educate ourselves. And, they're really kind of.
Are we good at spreadsheets like we did with the previous one? There were spreadsheets that had like thousands of rows.
I don't think so.
What, you mean?
Oh,
wait,
you mean the facility, the friend of
The
Excel?
facilities,
Might put together a Miro board.
What that was, and just for those, and Josh and I guess Sarah, you were on, back in.
That was just me and Neil.
Yeah, it was basically when we went through the building condition survey and determined what the priorities were. We had spreadsheets that were like 30 pages long. And we went through each item to say, okay, how do we prioritize that project, that segment? Is that going to be done this year? Is it going to be next year? Is it going to be the
That's a
third year?
facilities
Or
thing,
not
right?
at all?
It is a facility.
But that's a very different kind of project than this. I really think this is just going to be, once we know if the vote is approved, we will start figuring out how it's done.
I was
won't
only
have-
partially serious about it.
Yes,
I
I
know that
realize
we're gonna
that-
get, I know we're gonna get more detailed than just PowerPoint.
Right, but to the extent that we're talking about goals, do we have any concerns about these things as goals?
No.
Thank you.
I'm happy.
Yep. If I turn around and look at you.
I know, Theo, I feel bad that you're
He's
just
there.
behind us.
Oh, hi, Theo. Any questions? Any thoughts?
No questions.
Okay, great.
Mary? All right, so then, our next course of action then will be to put these on the agenda for the October 6th meeting for us to vote on them. And we've done officially our goals for the year. Thank you, Neil and Anna.
Thank you. Thank you, Neil, for sitting
Helping
in on
put
our
these together, helping us put these together. All right, so with that, we are at the closing of the meeting and recommended action that the Board of Education adjourn at 10:27 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. This wasn't even that much.